I've been interested in clothes and accessories since I was little. According to my mother, I was more interested in decorating myself than other children, and if my hair was messy or I didn't like the clothes, I wouldn't even go to school. That's how much I was very interested in my appearance. Thus, naturally, my dream was decided in that direction. I wasn't very good at studying, but I was more passionate about what I liked than anyone else, so my dream was firm. I wanted to be an entrepreneur in the apparel business. I like to be well dressed, but I also love to dress up others and make them look good. I thought that it would be more rewarding if people wore clothes that I sold and happily started their day energetically. So when I was little, I played dress up with my little sister. I used to say from an early age that I would definitely succeed in fashion. Maybe my sister was tired of that comment, and one day she said, "Sandra, stop saying that. I'm tired of hearing you say that all the time." Thinking about it now makes me laugh, but I would drag my little sister away from her favorite pastime of studying and putting makeup on her face to dress her up and enjoy it vicariously. I was that interested in clothes, and when I became an adult, I got a part-time job and worked diligently to save money and started a small online shopping mall. Of course, it was risky and a different path compared to my other friends, but I had to do what I wanted to do. And my mom and dad couldn't stop me because I was so stubborn. "Sandra, business is not that easy. Aren't you too young to start a business with a lot of risk on your hands? As your mom, I want you to go to college and get a job like other kids." "You know, Mom, this is my dream. I can do it better than anyone else." Buster questioned. For reference, I did not receive support from anyone when I started my business. I started with only the money I saved. It was a business that I started with just ambition, passion, and determination. But it failed beautifully. The shopping mall I built wasn't particularly distinctive, and the prices weren't cheap. So my shopping mall, which was neither here nor there, disappeared in a flood of so many shopping malls. "Sandra, don't be so heartbroken. Now get a job and live a normal life like everyone else. You can do anything." "Okay, I will." My mother told me that it was time to give up, as I was suffering the bitter pain of my business failure. She cajoled and soothed me. At that time, I knew it was time to admit my failure and I should fold it. But when I tried to give it up, my feelings were not easily made up. In the end, I started selling accessories through social media. I personally took the materials from the wholesale suppliers and made them one by one, all on my own. Fortunately, this attempt went well. It didn't generate a lot of income, but it was a result that I could be proud of myself. So my self-esteem rose and I gained my confidence. I knew it would work out. "Sandra, you worked hard and finally you did it." So my family and friends all congratulated me on my success. After always feeling down, I was able to be proud in front of my parents. I was so happy. That was when I met my current husband at a young age. I was making more money than my peers, and with strong pride, my husband was the only man I liked. My husband was an employee of one of my suppliers at the shopping mall I ran. We used to have frequent meetings, and we became close. When people see each other often, they say that they are bound to start having affection for each other. After having meetings with my husband often, we ended up eating together. Aside from work, we would talk about personal affairs now and then. Before I knew it, we had become quite close. Moreover, I was very worried in many ways since I just opened a store at the time. My husband would give me a lot of advice. He gave me advice about work, but also was very supportive on a mental level. I was the kind of person who didn't depend on anyone, but he was the kind of person who disarmed even me. It's a trivial thing, but he would send me messages like, "I believe it'll work, Sandra." Those clothes that came out are so luxurious and sophisticated. But listening to my husband's words, I gradually came to rely on him little by little. And before I knew it, I started to think of him not as a colleague, but as the opposite sex. Then my husband asked me, "Sandra, would you like to go to dinner with me tonight? I'll treat you." With that, we naturally started to date. While dating my husband, I found out that he was an only child. People often had a prejudice that if a man was an only child, they would be spoiled or selfish. But my husband proved them wrong. He was kind, caring, and supportive. I was grateful to have him in my life. He may have grown up with a lot of love from his family and maybe a bit arrogant or had a bad personality. But my husband wasn't like that. He was very considerate of others. And strangely enough, the more I got to know him, the more I wanted to know him and never got tired of him. Maybe it was because I had only met small-minded guys who were always jealous of my wealth or abilities. My husband was someone from whom I could learn a lot. Then one day, I must have liked my husband so much that I put myself out there and proposed to him. It must have been because we liked each other so much that there was no reason not to get married. I wanted to marry him now, and these are the flowers I prepared for him. Could it be that you're proposing to me right now? Yes, it is a proposal. Of course, will you accept the flowers? Well, no matter what, how could a woman propose? A man should propose. You should have waited a bit. How could you beat me to it? What does it matter whether it's a man or a woman proposing? It's what the person who wants to do it should do. I sir supreme hurts. Aren't you going to accept it? I even proposed first. I felt impatient and anxious that I must not lose my husband. I guess that played a part. I had a strong thought that I should spend the rest of my life with such a good person like him, and since he was a trustworthy person, I thought that marriage would be no problem. But it wasn't all good because I had one concern, and that was my mother-in-law. I even proposed and started preparing for the marriage, but my husband suddenly said, "Actually, I want to live with my mother." "That your mother?" My husband wanted to live with his mother. He was very worried because she had symptoms of depression, living alone after his father died. His mother didn't have any other children to live with, and although my mother-in-law's younger sister came by once in a while, it wasn't that often. So I had to think about what to do about this problem over and over. I don't want to force it on you. I also like the idea of starting our married life together with just the two of us. So don't feel pressured and decide. I've been thinking a lot, and to be honest, living together is somewhat burdensome from my perspective. So I'm thinking, why don't we find our newlywed home close to your mother's and visit her often? Okay, that's okay too. What I suggested was to buy a house for our newlyweds near his mother's house. I knew what a kind person my husband was and how good his temper was, so I was being considerate of my husband in my own way. However, my husband seemed to be thinking about something with a slightly displeased expression, unlike his readily agreed words. My husband's reaction made me feel uncomfortable, but that was the best choice for me, so we started our newlywed life near my mother-in-law's house. I ended up buying the house myself, and I, who had a much higher income than my husband, had to pay a lot more for the wedding expenses. At that time, I didn't think much of it, thinking that someone with a little more money could pay for it. But rather, my mother-in-law made this an issue and criticized me. It was when I visited my mother-in-law's house with my husband. His mother was the first to make a remark out of nowhere while eating, so I was very frustrated. "Hey, how much did you say you earn? Is your annual salary $100,000? But you shouldn't put her Scott down, just because you make a lot of money. You do know that a business could boom in an instant, but also crash overnight. So if you act arrogantly and start to crush her Scott's pride, the backbone of the family will not stand." Got that? In my mother-in-law's words, I had to drink digestive medicine all day long. What the hell did I say to my husband that she had to say that? When my husband also did not say anything to her. Moreover, talks similar to that continued whenever I visit. When I had to keep listening to the same nagging, I became frustrated and annoyed, so I told her, "Mother, I don't do that. Scott and I respect each other, and we are doing well." But she wouldn't even listen. At first, I thought she was a nice person because she was kind and said, "Darling, you can't talk about whatever to me." But many things she said were very annoying, so I started to regret living so close to her house. My husband told me that she had depression, but as far as I could see, I saw no symptoms of depression and she was just acting very attached to her son. Not only that, she was obsessive over money. She told me not to break my husband's spirit over money, but she suddenly demanded that I give her spending money, and that was $3,000 every month. $3,000? Why did you stay, dude? Why do you need so much for your spending money? Why do you want to know? If your mother is telling you that you only need to give it, why do you ask for so much? When you earn that much money for your annual salary, giving me such a small amount is not wasteful. No, mother, it's not that. You already have money with you, yet you demand spending money. So I am asking, where are you planning to spend it? That way I can give to you freely with peace of mind. If I go out with my friends, I have many places to spend money. Don't talk so much and just give it to me. I hate repeating myself twice. She outright demanded money from me and even gave me a deadline to pay her. You must deposit it at the end of this month. Don't make me call to remind you. I went to my husband directly to discuss this issue. But my husband, whom I thought would side with me, said my mom is originally a big spender. Since you earn a lot of money, you could at least do that much for my mom, couldn't you? Honey, it isn't right. Actually, when we were getting married, your mother even told us that she wasn't going to ask for any spending money. Well, my mom has no properties. She only has that house. As you know, old people get depressed easily. So if they have no money to spend, how empty would they feel? When I went to my mom's house, she was crying in the dark room with the lights out. So please be nice to her. I'm asking you. At first, I wasn't going to give her $3,000 a month when she outright demanded it. I also needed to save money for the rainy days in my business. However, my husband was practically whimpering and begging me for several days, so I couldn't help but give her the money. I also didn't want to have any conflicts at the beginning of our newlywed life. I hated giving money to my mother-in-law, who demanded it as if I owed her, but later I thought she would come to appreciate it. But rather than appreciating me, she wanted to increase the amount. On top of that, when I carefully wrapped her birthday present, she reacted, "All my other daughters-in-law give $5,000 per month to their mothers-in-law for their spending money." Truthfully, I thought at least a luxury brand handbag for my birthday gift. So it is very disappointing. How much does this health food cost for you to buy and bring it? Mother, this health food is very expensive too. Never mind. How could I communicate with someone like this? With someone like you? When she was acting that way, how could she not hate me? And that was how belligerent my mother-in-law was when it came to money matters. It would have been good if just my mother-in-law was abnormal, but another problem occurred in my marriage. That was my husband, who kept going to his mother's house too often. Of course at first, my husband did not take me with him, so it wasn't that unbearable. However, the frequency increased, and as if he was obsessed with his mother, he was going to his mother's house at least 3 or 4 times a week. Honey, I'll go to my mom's house. Again today? We were going to go shopping this weekend. We have lots to shop. What was it? I forgot. You just buy my clothes for me. At that time, I was pregnant. Thankfully, I got pregnant during our honeymoon, and I was being careful while working, but my husband practically dropped by his mother's house on a daily basis and then came home. Sometimes, he told me that he was going to sleep overnight, but ended up staying there for 3-4 days. Because of that, I had to sleep alone at night. It wasn't as if we had been married for 10 years, but only a short time since our wedding, and as a newlywed couple, it's normal to want to be together always and fall asleep in each other's arms. My husband didn't consider my feelings. Why are you complaining whenever I go to my mom's house? Why are you nagging so much? Since we started our newly life, you have been sleeping at your mother's house 3 or 4 times a week. Then why did you get married? Didn't you think I would complain about it? It's not as if your mother is seriously sick. How could you leave me, who's pregnant, alone and go there every time? I might have been more sensitive and emotional because I was pregnant. However, more than anything else, I needed my husband's caring hand, and when I missed him, I couldn't get a hold of my husband when he was at his mother's. And I got upset. It wasn't that his mother was very kindly understanding that I did not come over to her house. I used to go to her house once a week with my husband, but she would criticize me and try to shame me each time. Why is your body so dense? It is so hard to see your face. Other people's daughters-in-law even go all the way to the countryside to see their mothers-in-law. But how long has it been since you got married that your attitude towards your mother-in-law is that poor? I wonder what kind of manners you learned at your home. What are you saying? Aren't you talking too harshly? What do you mean it is too harsh? It's because of your insolent behavior that I say those things. You act like this to me, so I don't even have to see how you treat your husband. Aren't you nagging like crazy at my son and trying to order him around on every little detail? It's no wonder how much my son can't breathe to be with you, that he comes over to my house and can't even rest and keeps sighing constantly. But you should know this. My son is a college graduate and you are only a high school graduate. The education levels are different, so you are in no position to try and teach my son. Right then, I became so furious, and I was almost on the verge of blowing my top. When I listened to my mother-in-law, who claimed that as a high school graduate, my level was too low to teach her son, I felt so dumbfounded that I was speechless. I left straight away, without saying goodbye, and returned home. As soon as I got home, I drank cold water trying to calm my anger down, but the anger that was burning inside me wouldn't cool down. On the other hand, I wondered what my husband had said to his mother that she was acting like that, so I complained to my husband. What did you tell your mom? Your mom said that I was nagging at you like crazy, and how could you say something like that when it is not true? Even though it's your mother, you aren't being careful and just say it any old way because you are comfortable. But the moment it enters her ears, she takes it as if it's true. Why do you criticize my mom whenever you speak? Was it wrong to say that you had been snappy after you got pregnant? Honestly, it's true. It is very weary to deal with your hysteric tantrums. Babe, after I come back from work, I want to rest at home. But because of you, I am suffering. As soon as I come in, you order me to clean the house, sort the socks, and constantly boss me around. So is getting pregnant some heroic event or something? You should think about your husband who is earning money. Isn't organizing your clothes something basic? How did you change so much? Is repeating to you the same person that I knew before? Because of my heavy body from pregnancy, I had only asked my husband to do a few household chores. My husband said that he hated that, and he went to his mom and told her in detail. Expressions, he was so ridiculous. But that day, I had had a big fight with my husband, and while he was sleeping, snoring loudly, I had my swollen belly and cried so much. I felt like I wanted to get divorced right away, but I calmed myself down, telling myself to let it pass. Now that I think back, it would have been better by 100 times if I had gotten divorced right at that time. But I was afraid to make that choice when I had a baby. Even if I didn't get divorced, I didn't want to talk or see my mother-in-law's face, so I stopped giving money to my husband and his mother. Then his mother started causing a big upheaval. What are you doing? Give me my money right away. If you don't deposit it today, I'll think that you are severing your ties with me. Gonta. Because of you, I can't even attend my class reunion party. Mother, I'm sorry, but from now on, I won't be able to give you money any longer. It's not easy for me to earn money, so don't ask for your spending money from me. I'll hang up now. What? A tweet. She even came over and knocked on our door and created a big scene. But I threatened my husband not to open the door. While we maintained a cold war between my husband and me, my husband couldn't handle my mother's demands and ended up opening the door for her. My mother-in-law came in and poured the food garbage that she brought and splashed it on me and everywhere in the house. It happened so suddenly, and I couldn't even breathe due to the stench. But my mother-in-law shouted at me, "You bitch! How dare you degrade me with your money?" After that incident, I told my husband that I would sever my ties with his mother, and I suffered for several days, unable to get over the shock of that day's event. Even though the stench was all washed away, I still felt as if I could smell it somewhere on my body. Whenever I smelled that, I would think about his mother. In the midst of all the commotion, I felt labor pains and ended up giving birth to a beautiful daughter. But I had hoped that my husband would change a little after our daughter was born. However, my mother-in-law was still angry with me, even after she splashed garbage on me and went around the neighborhood cursing about me, calling me a terrible daughter-in-law. For experience, I could even hear it. But my husband acted as if it happened in another family. And unbelievably, even worse things happened. I couldn't even express how horrible it was. It was something that I couldn't handle. At that time, I was suffering from postpartum depression and couldn't pay attention to my business. And before I realized it, my business was going down. The gross revenue was cut in half, and revisiting customers were hardly coming back. And when I didn't have money with me, I still felt nervous. Then my friend, who I was close with when my business was going well, told me to try some stocks and gave me a few leads. Even though I knew I shouldn't, she was someone I became close to from the onset of my business, and she was well known to have a lot of stock information, so I must have been mentally unsettled that I ended up investing a large sum of money. I waited several months, but rather than making any money, all of the money disappeared into thin air. In an instant, I went from a successful businesswoman to a completely failed, penniless beggar. The first one to respond to this news was my mother-in-law. "Are you crazy? I heard that you got into debt. You better get divorced right away. You acted so arrogantly, making a lot of money and causing all this fuss just to end up like this. You better not let it affect and harm my son, so get divorced immediately." "Mother, what are you doing? Hurry up and sign the divorce papers now. That's why you should have acted kindly. I knew the minute you told me that you weren't giving me money. You deserved what you got." How many people could talk that way in front of someone's face? Probably not very many. If my husband had any conscience, he would have comforted me, but he ignored me. Our marriage had problems from the very beginning. We are not compatible, and it's right that we stop here. And that was how I was forced to get divorced. The process of the divorce was not very smooth. Every day of it was very painful. I wondered how it turned out. I wondered where I made such a big mistake. I kept asking without any right answers, which spun in my head. My mother-in-law said, "My son's life got twisted because of meeting the wrong girl. This is why a good woman must come into the family." But because of her, look how my son's life turned out. She cursed and blamed me until the end. The only fortunate thing was that he didn't insist on physical custody of our daughter. I was worried that he would, but because he had no affection for his daughter, he told me to raise her myself. After I got divorced, my harsh life began in earnest. I didn't have a place to go, so I lived at my friend's house here and there. I felt too guilty to show up at my parents' door, so I didn't contact them on purpose. But I don't know how they learned about my whereabouts, and they contacted me first. "Why aren't you coming home?" My dad scolded. "Hurry and pack up and come home. What if your baby gets sick? Hurry and come home." At my dad's scolding, I sobbed and headed to my hometown. As soon as I arrived, my parents hugged me endlessly and soothed me for my pain. My dad found out how I got divorced and what kind of married life I had. He became so angry towards my husband and yelled at me to go see my worthless husband and his mother. Our household was in chaos for a while. Eventually, he called my ex-mother-in-law and yelled, "How could you treat my daughter like a slave? And when she wasn't helping anymore, you abandoned her like that? If you are a family, you shouldn't have acted like that. How could you not have any decency?" But my ex-mother-in-law did not bat an eye and said, "Hello, your daughter has never been any help to me. She didn't treat my son well, and she never acted like a daughter-in-law to me. She was useless. Since we took her into our family, you should be grateful to us." My father became bewildered at her words and yelled at them that they were the kind of people he could never associate with in the future. He hung up on them. After that, my parents lent me some money so that I could rent a room and live there with my baby and try to get hold of myself. At first I thought, what was the meaning of our living any longer? It was a bad thought. I felt ashamed that I had failed terribly in my life. I felt like I was at the bottom of my life. Once in a while, I heard some news about my ex-husband. I heard that he was living and doing very well, but I was the only one in such a poor shape. However, when I looked at my baby, I couldn't think about giving up on my life. I couldn't have bad thoughts when an innocent baby looked at me. So I left my baby with my parents and tried to work any job to make money. I gritted my teeth to withstand any hardship. As I only had a high school diploma, not many companies would hire me. So I ended up working in a restaurant for 10 hours a day. It was hard enough to cause moaning automatically from my body aches. But I looked at my baby's photo each time and got the strength back to persevere and thought, living well would be a way to seek revenge against my ex-husband and his mother. Of course, there was an occasion to ask for help from my ex-husband and his mother. The child support that my ex-husband was giving was not enough, and I told him that I couldn't afford to buy the baby's formula. I asked him for his help, but he only sent me $100 and said, "I'm living well with another woman, so I wish you wouldn't contact me anymore. I became a divorced woman overnight because of you, so you should stop causing me any problems." I realized that he was trash for not only abandoning me, but also his own daughter. After 5 years, my daughter became old enough, and I had saved enough money to rent a small house where the two of us could live. We'd been living apart for a while, and I felt fortunate to be able to hug my baby and then take care of her with my own 2 hands. The reality of not having enough money to provide for my daughter was hard on me. I couldn't buy proper clothes or a new pair of shoes for her. As a mother, I felt very guilty. If my child had different parents, how would she have been raised? I thought about it often and became angry several times a day. City in that moment, while buying my daughter's clothes at the market, I thought about starting a shopping mall to sell children's clothes online with specific designs and ideas. In truth, I had no operating funds and I was afraid to start. But a former acquaintance told me that he would invest in my business, and with his help, I was able to start another online shopping mall. This time, I didn't have any greed, and my first priority was to make high-quality clothes that my daughter could wear. Children's clothes were a strange area for me, so I spent late nights researching and studying before starting my business. At first, no one paid attention, but eventually my sales increased. Even though I faced some challenges while operating the shopping mall, I persevered and my revenues increased enough to be able to advertise. It took 5 years to establish a stable business. At times, I was so busy that I had to go to work while carrying my baby, even on weekends. But now, I have enough earnings to live comfortably and do more for my child. Most importantly, I no longer have to ask my ex-husband for help, which is a huge relief. Then one day, something happened. I don't know how they found out that I was doing well, but my ex-husband and his family suddenly appeared, wanting to take advantage of my success. But my ex-husband and his mother came to see me, looking like homeless people in shabby worn clothes. They both smelled a stench, and especially my ex-mother-in-law seemed ill and had lost so much weight. She sobbed as she looked at me, and even though I didn't want to face her, I sat at a nearby cafe to listen to their story. "Why are you here?" "Honey, please save us." I asked, "What do you mean by save us?" My ex-husband explained that their lives were a mess. He had remarried a gold digger who stole money from him and ran off. As a result, he had to work as a day laborer, while his mother worked as a cleaning lady at a department store. "I'm sorry. I was short-sighted. I've wronged you. Please forgive me for this once." My ex-mother-in-law added, "My mom and I are living in hell. My mom has cancer, but she still has to work. And I am living a life that's worse than a beggar. Could you think of our past together and help us just this once?" When I checked social media, I saw that your company was famous. You've achieved great success. If you could give us $50,000, we could somehow manage. Is that possible? I was taken aback. They came to see me to ask for money. My ex-husband continued, "Darling, I regretted it a lot after I kicked you out. I've repented a lot, so the past is the past. We've a destiny together, and that's rare since we were family once. So couldn't you help us, please?" My ex-mother-in-law even kneeled in front of me and pleaded, "Please give us some money. We need $50,000. At that moment, she reminded me of when she demanded $3,000, and it gave me shivers. How could she never change? I shook my head and pushed her away from me. Then I told her mother, "I am sorry, but I have no obligation to give him or you any money. I am no longer your family either. When we were family, you didn't even treat me like a family member. And now you come here and dare to demand money. When my business failed, if you had given me a word of comfort, I would have helped you. But what did you tell me then? Didn't you say that I deserved to fail? How could you come here and demand money when you spoke to me like that? I'm sorry, but I do not want to see you or your mother. Please never come back. If you do, I'll report you to police, honey." Even though my ex-husband called me out at the top of his lungs and his mother sobbed, I turned away from them and walked over to my car that was parked. Those two continued to sit at the cafe with their heads down. As I gazed at them while sitting in my car, I wasn't even angry because they looked so pitiful. But I felt they deserved their destined life. And I went back home to my child. Now I am living well and happily with my daughter. Even though I am a single mom, I never think that I am lonely or it's hard to live. I've persevered through hardship, so I tell myself that I am proud of my past. If there are any of you who are going through a hard time, please know that it will end someday and you should persevere a little more. Please be strong and be sure to maintain good health. Please cheer for me and rate your comments of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscribing is a big help to me. Have a wonderful day.